Good afternoon. Thank you for joining this presentation for prospective applicants to Boston College. It's entitled The Liberal Arts Advantage. My name is John Mahoney. I'm the Vice Provost for Enrollment Management here at Boston College, and I'll be your moderator for this afternoon. At the outset, I want to extend my sincere hope to all of you students, as well as your families, that everybody is safe and healthy during this very challenging time for our country and for the world. We here in the admissions office at Boston College recognize that for a lot of you, you've had your college search process sort of upended by the pandemic. And we know that whether it was in the spring or during the summer, a lot of college visits that you intended to make just didn't happen. That may even continue into the fall, sadly. We know that's a real challenge for you. We hope that you've taken advantage of an online information session through our website or a campus tour, a live campus tour. And this afternoon's program is designed to give you even further insight into the Boston College experience. Now, if you've researched Boston College on your own, you know that it's a Jesuit Catholic university. And since the early Jesuits began operating colleges and universities nearly 500 years ago, they've emphasized the value of a liberal arts education. Now, I've worked in college admission for almost 36 years, and I'm always a little bit concerned when I meet high school students who are preoccupied at that stage with what they will pursue as a major in college. It's too early to be focused on that. Right now, your goal should be to identify the kind of institution that will suit you the best, both as a student and as a human being, during this important 4-year period in your life. College should, after all, be a time for exploration and discovery, finding your passions, and doing that will allow you to find the right major for you. At Boston College, we believe that if you want to call yourself a truly educated person, you've got to be broadly educated. And this means being exposed to different subject areas, different ideas, different ways of looking at the world. And this happens through our core curriculum here at Boston College. We are living right now in a time of unprecedented change, driven both by technology and now a pandemic. Today's college graduates require sharp analytical thinking and problem-solving skills, and they need to be effective communicators with the written word and the spoken word. In short, they need breadth and versatility as they face the inevitable changes that lie ahead. Additionally, a good liberal arts education offers students the chance to confront big questions about who they are, what kinds of lives they want to lead, and what kind of impact they might have on the world. Our presentation today will run for about 45 minutes, and you are welcome to submit questions through the Q&A function on Zoom. We will try to address as many of those questions as we can before we conclude this program at about 5 o'clock. It is now my pleasure to introduce our distinguished faculty panel, and I'm happy to say that they are joined this afternoon by 3 current Boston College students, and the faculty will introduce those students as they begin their presentation. First off, Brian Garreau is Associate Professor of Sociology and International Studies. Professor Garreau earned his bachelor's degree at Providence College, a master's degree at Washington State University, and he holds a PhD from the University of California, Santa Cruz. Professor Garreau was named Associate Dean for the Core in 2018, which means that he oversees the university core curriculum and chairs the Core Renewal Committee. Professors Elizabeth Shalala and Natana DeLong-Bass have created an Enduring Questions course in Boston College's core curriculum. Enduring Questions courses are linked pairs of courses taught by professors who encourage their students to think across disciplines about issues which continue to challenge contemporary thinkers. In this case, how geographic boundaries impose other kinds of boundaries on human beings. These Enduring Questions courses fulfill 2 core curriculum requirements here at Boston College. The Enduring Questions courses that Professors Shalala and DeLong-Bass will be teaching this fall are called Geographies of Imperialism, History and Theologies of Colonization. Elizabeth Shalala is Associate Professor of the Practice and History and Assistant Dean of the Core Curriculum at Boston College. Professor Shalala earned her bachelor's, master's degrees, and her PhD from Georgetown University. Her most recent book is entitled The Late Ottoman Empire and Egypt: Hybridity, Law, and Gender. Natana DeLong-Bass is Associate Professor of the Practice in Theology. Professor DeLong-Bass earned her bachelor's degree from Middlebury College and her master's degree and PhD from Georgetown University. She published 2 books in 2018. The first, Sharia, What Everyone Needs to Know. And the second one, Islam, A Living Faith. At this point, it's my pleasure to turn this over to Professor Brian Garreau, who is going to provide a nice introduction to this session by covering the core curriculum at Boston College. Brian?
Thank you very much, John, and thank you to all our colleagues and students joining us today. We're grateful to have you. And welcome to all of you who are joining us on Zoom to hear more about Boston College and in particular the core curriculum today. It's an honor to talk to you about the core. I think you'll see that it plays a central role in the undergraduate experience here at BC, and we think that's something that makes us distinctive from other universities you might be considering. So I'm going to run through a few PowerPoint slides to talk to you a little bit about the core, and then I'll turn it over to Elizabeth and Natana, and we'll get to the exciting part of the presentation where you get to hear about their course and also from the students who took their course in the past. So let's turn over to the PowerPoint now. So as I said, the core curriculum really is at the heart of the undergraduate experience at Boston College. That's why it's called the core, not something else. It's also why the core is a central feature in Boston College's strategic plan, Ever to Excel. We literally create 10-year plans at BC around our core curriculum. Our best faculty teach in the core, and students reflect on the experience very positively years after graduation. Next slide, please. The 15 requirements that make up the core is not a group of general education requirements easily replaced by, for example, an AP exam or a high school course. At BC, it's so much more than this. The core is designed to provide students with a foundational, interdisciplinary educational experience rooted in the Jesuit Catholic mission of the university, to teach students about the social and natural sciences and the humanities, and to help students begin to discern who they are, to grapple with questions of faith and reason, and really to start the journey of discovering what the world needs of them. Now, one of the latest forms of renewal that we've experienced in the core has to do with cultural diversity, and I want to just quickly highlight this because it's something that Natana and Elizabeth are going to engage with in their discussion of their course. So we have a culture diversity core requirement, but there's a new initiative that's been in play for a few years now called Difference, Justice, and the Common Good. In these courses, students will explore the relationship between justice and the common good and imagine how to act constructively in dialogue with people who are marginalized and dispossessed. We have a growing number of core courses that are doing this, but I think Elizabeth and Natana's course is really exemplary in how they engage with difference, justice, and the common good. So I'll look forward to hearing students and our faculty talk about that. Next slide, please. So there are many excellent courses in our core curriculum, but some of them are truly distinctive BC courses. And some are designed specifically for first-year students. So this afternoon, we will talk about some of these distinctive courses, complex problem and enduring question courses. Complex problems and enduring questions are for first-year students only. As John mentioned, they both fulfill 2 core requirements, but some of them, like Elizabeth and Natana's, fulfill a 3rd in cultural diversity through difference, justice, and the common good. Complex problems courses are 6-credit courses in which 2 instructors from 2 different disciplines share the lecture together. They have a weekly hands-on lab component to those courses, and there are weekly reflection sessions. Next slide, please. Now, what we're going to hear more about today are Enduring Questions courses. So Enduring Questions are two paired courses taught separately by two different instructors, but they're linked through the question that binds them together. The same students take both sides of the pair, and they attend reflection sessions 4 times during the semester. Next slide. So on top of Elizabeth and Atana's paired courses, this coming fall, we're going to have a whole set of courses engaging with exciting topics and problems and questions. So some of the complex problems courses will engage with contemporary problems such as climate change, issues around race and violence, and ethics and engineering. And enduring questions such as what it means to be human, the natural and artistic questions around living in cities on the water, what it means that great heroes like George Washington and King David are revered and yet have personal flaws, are all going to be explored in these courses. Students and faculty have talked about how complex problems and enduring questions are life-changing courses, that they're helping students decide on what major or minor they might consider in the near future, as opening up whole new ways of viewing the world to them, to stimulating personal reflections on their own faith and religious beliefs, to introducing them to a trusted group of friends outside of their dorms. And that's really been an exciting development in these courses. We find that the students and faculty are forming real intellectual relationships between the students and between the students and the faculty. And it makes these really exciting for both our students and our faculty. So with that short introduction about the core curriculum, I want to turn it over to our guests and let Natana and Elizabeth take it from here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much on behalf of myself, Professor DeLongbaugh, to John and Brian for those warm introductions. Let's pull the slideshow back up to talk a bit more about our own courses, Geographies of Imperialism, History of Colonization, and Theology of Colonization. So the inspiration for this course for me began with a quote from the eminent founder of postcolonial studies, Edward Said. Quote, "Every empire, however, tells itself in the world that it is unlike all other empires, and its mission is not to plunder and control, but to educate and liberate." So in the spirit of that, creating an enduring question, 2 courses paired by a timeless question, something that students can grapple with over the course of the semester, or we can grapple with over the course of our lives. Our question to students is, the age of empires is past, or is it? And we go on a journey together with our students to examine enduring ideas of empires and their challengers through the present day using the lenses of history and theology. And theology, and Professor DeLongbaugh will talk more about this, specifically Islam and Christianity. So we begin with traditional geographies of maps. We explore how empires colonize not only territories with physical boundaries, but also bodies and minds, using race, gender, sexuality, ethnicity, education, laws, and its very institutions. So in our course, we use the British and French empires in the Middle East and North Africa as case studies to identify and question how to overcome so many boundaries and barriers that are still imposed on people across the world today. Because these are special freshman-only classes and core, as Professor Groves spoke about, really the heart of Boston College courses, we think it's very important to develop different skills in our students. And so we work really on skills of critical analysis, writing skills, presentation skills, communication skills, and we like to consider our paired courses sort of a how to Boston College 101 for students to be successful in their time. And hopefully our students will talk more about that today. So on our course, we ask our students to almost map themselves onto Boston College, becoming a part of the Boston College community in their transition from high school to college students. See the next slide, please. Okay, so there's a bit of biographical information there about myself and Professor DeLongbass. And I think what you will notice is that we both earned our PhDs from Georgetown University. However, we never met at Georgetown University. That being said, we came to find out when we did meet at Boston College that we had the same PhD advisor, this lovely gentleman in between us here in this photo, Professor Emeritus of Islamic History, John O'Vole. And we were delighted last year when he could come and speak to our course, students in our courses during a reflection session. And maybe the students will talk a bit more about that later on. So we've just been delighted to offer this course and to work together at Boston College, sharing our backgrounds in both history and theology with students here. In the next slide, I'll introduce you to 3 of our wonderful students from last year who are rising sophomores at Boston College. They may want to present themselves quickly right now, or at the end, what I'd like them to do is not only Sean O'Neill, Madeline Bowden, and Abel Johannes, who are all in these photos from our course last year, I'd like them to also let you know when they do come on to speak, where they call home, perhaps a little bit of how they made the choice to come to Boston College, and then what their colleges and majors are now. We'll do that a bit towards the end. In our next slide, we're going to speak a little bit more about the 3 core requirements that these paired courses fulfill. It's very important because, as you heard, our courses not only fulfill a history core requirement and a theology core requirement, but they also fulfill cultural diversity through a pathway called difference, justice, and the common core. And the common good. And I'll have Professor Natana DeLongbass speak just a bit more about the theology and cultural diversity requirements in one moment. I'll just say the core learning goals on the history side of the course. In this course, we critically and analytically use concepts such as empire and colonization, and we discuss them and we interrogate them to see what they really mean. We use British, French, and Ottoman empires to track change over time, which is what all good history students do. We use the vocabulary, tools, and methodologies of historians, and in particular, we work with primary source documents like the map we show here, which is probably the most famous British Empire map. There's so many things we look at and analyze in this map. Again, maybe the students want to say more, but you can see the rich imagery, the pink and not pink colors. There's lots we could get into here. We dispel common historical myths and misunderstandings in our course, and then we reflect on how our identity fits into the historical narrative. So how historical forces shape the world we live in today and where students fall into that historical narrative is very important in a core history course, and in this course in particular. Professor DeLongbass, did you want to say a bit more about what it fulfills in theology and how it fulfills cultural diversity?
Sure. For theology, we are thinking about the human experience in relation to the world. Theo in theology indicates that we do that by thinking about God or some divine being. And so the idea here is trying to make sense out of the human experience in the face of certain death, something that many of us are thinking about more right now. How do we go about living lives that are purposeful and meaningful? And so the use of this idea of difference, justice, and the common good is one tool that we can use for doing that. When we think about difference, we approach that as an opportunity to hear from and consider different perspectives on different issues. People coming from different contexts may experience things in different ways. And the more of those voices we are able to bring to the surface and listen to, the richer our experience becomes. With respect to justice, we think about issues related to power and responsibility. What are our responsibilities to ourselves? What are our responsibilities to each other? And especially, what are our responsibilities when we are faced with situations of injustice? How do we recognize injustice? What do our faith traditions encourage us to do in response to that? And at the heart of all of this really is this idea of the common good, that we are more than just who we are as individuals. We are all connected to each other. We are all connected to communities. And so while it is important for us to think about our own personal development, we need to think about that development in relationship to the world around us, both the human and the non-human. And I think we can move on to the next slide.
So some topics we cover are linked to modern empires and their colonial legacy, ideas and policies that persist in the present day. We look at historical roots, particularly in race theory. We look at gender, their norms and constructs. We talk about slavery, which is a way that we can work out how the colonial powers use the ideas of race and gender to subjugate certain peoples, and what, again, persists to the current day.
With respect to Islam and Christianity, if you're wondering why these two faith traditions in particular, if you look at it quantitatively, the answer is very simple. They are the world's two largest faith traditions. There are currently about 2.4 billion Christians on this planet and about 1.9 billion Muslims. Combined, they make up 53% of the global population. And so my perspective is that regardless of what any of us believe as individuals, if we are really trying to form ourselves to be global citizens, if more than half of the world's population believes in these two faith traditions, then it makes sense for us to be conversant with them, to know something about what these faith traditions believe, what values they share in common, what differences exist and where those differences exist, why that might be the case. And just as Professor Shalala has mentioned with respect to historical misperceptions, it's also very important, I think, to address the reality that there is a lot of misinformation and disinformation out in the public sphere, particularly with respect to Islam, but people have unusual stereotypes about Christianity as well. And so studying both of these faith traditions together, I think, becomes a richer way of examining some of these enduring questions that human beings have always asked. In terms of what space has to do with any of this, I would imagine in the era of COVID-19 that all of us are much more conscious of space than we probably ever have been in our lives. What kind of space is open to us? What kind of space is closed to us? What new ways are we finding to think about space? Is space a creative opportunity? Does it represent a boundary not to be crossed? Does it represent some sort of confinement? Next slide, please. So as Professor Shalala mentioned, our driving question has to do with the age of empires. Is it past? Is it not past? And what you'll see here on the left, we have a map of the Middle East and North Africa that shows you some of the different colonial empires that were claimed in a few countries that retained their independence. And then we have on the right a map that demonstrates some of the United States' overseas deployments today, and we can see that some of those regions are very similar. You may notice on the left side of the map that the United States is not listed as a colonial power. Today, the dynamics seem to have changed a little bit. What does colonization even mean today? What does an empire look like? These are some of the big questions that we will try to address in this course. Some things are visible, some things are a little bit less visible. Next slide, please. And why is space important? As you move on to college, you may have more questions about space than you have ever had before. In light of COVID-19, I have had to really rethink some of the ways in which I teach. One of the activities I normally have students do is to attend houses of worship to observe services. As many of you are probably aware, many houses of worship had to alter their worship formats as large gatherings were not permitted. What impact does that have? If you are not able to gather physically with your community, does it change the experience? Does the experience count for less? What is the impact on sacred space if people are not able to occupy it? Does the space somehow lose its sanctity, or does it retain it once it's given? Does it always remain? If our worship is taking place outside of our normal worship space, what impact might that have? And what happens if our space simply is not available to us for some reason? And how far does our sense of space carry? If we were to discover intelligent life on another planet, would that life be expected to adopt our particular patterns of faith, our particular patterns of worship? Would we have to open our minds to different ways of experiencing our faith? So lots of big questions. I don't have the answers for you in the few minutes that we have today, but hopefully it's enough of a teaser that you'll think about coming to work with us. Next slide, please. At the same time that we're thinking about space, I would also encourage us to think about boundaries. What is the purpose of boundaries? Are they intended to limit us, to confine us, to box us in? Do they present us with an opportunity to perhaps start to recognize some of our own fears? Why do we create boundaries? Are we trying to create safe spaces and safe zones for ourselves? And who has the right to set and enforce boundaries? What happens when those boundaries are transgressed? Is it possible, maybe, to think of boundaries as an invitation to uphold two things at once? Our personal right and need for safety and security, but also at the same time finding ways to allow us to be together so that we can continue to live in community. Next slide, please.
So we search for answers together. We do it in class. We have the reflection sessions that are 4 times a semester, but we've never limited ourselves, I would say, to those 4 reflection sessions. Here's just 2 images. One was a trip we took to the MFA as a class. Another was a talk on slavery that Professor Emeritus David Northrop came in and did for us. And, you know, we just take our time in this class to journey together, to learn about what BC has to offer, the resources that are here for students, and we do the work of our core classes while creating community. We read maps, newspapers, diaries, diplomatic documents, legal cases, novels on both sides of the courses. We consider buildings. In fact, Hagia Sophia became a major project last year, and it's amazing what happened with it this summer. It was unanticipated during the course of the course, but although it's a theology and history course, it does become so relevant in contemporary times. With our students, we access and go to the libraries at Boston College, as Professor DeLongbass said, churches, mosques, speakers, faculty, ourselves and our students present their research and their findings during the course of the classes, and the course ends with research papers using both theological and historical sources and methodologies that the students present to the entire class. So it's an absolutely, you know, fantastic experience, but don't take my word for it. Let's talk to some of our students now. And we've prepared some questions, but we're also very happy to have questions from the audience as well. So where will you find your answers? Well, maybe Professor DeLongbass will say a word about that, and we'll get to the student questions.
So just as you are considering your life's journey, just a reminder that none of us really know where our lives might take us, what paths might be open to us, or who we might meet along them. But what I would invite you to do is to think about the 3 major questions that Jesuit education asks us to consider. What are you good at? What brings you joy? And who does the world need you to be, especially right now in this moment? The next 4 years of your life are going to be really intense and really exciting and hopefully take you in directions you can't even imagine right now. And I hope that they will be an opportunity to explore yourself, your interests, your goals, and your objectives, and also to really think about this particular moment that we are living through right now and what impact you would like to have on it. How do you want to respond to the circumstances we're living in? What needs do you see in your family, your local community, your friend network, even your country and the world? What gifts do you have to bring to the table? And what skill sets and knowledge bases would you like to acquire in order to help to facilitate that? I hope that you will find the environment that is best suited for you to be able to pursue those interests and whatever it is that you hope to do. With our last slide, we'll simply indicate that it may be with us at Boston College, and we've even provided you with a map in case you need it for guidance around the campus. Thank you.
Now we'll get to our student questions. Madeline, Abel, and Sean. Why don't you say your names, where you call home, your college, and your major for the prospective students.
Hi, my name is Madeline Bowden. I'm from Marblehead, Massachusetts. I went to Marblehead High School. I'm a sophomore in Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences, and I'm a biochemistry major right now.
Hi,
My
I'm
name is
Sean O'Neill.
Oh, go ahead,
Sorry,
Sean.
Bell.
You can go
I'm
ahead,
Sean. I'm from Weston, Connecticut. I came into BC dead set on becoming an international studies major in MCAS. And as I'll discuss in the student questions, I ended up picking up a theology double major after this class. So I'll have more to say on that, but Abel, all yours.
Hi, my name is Abel. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, and I'm heading into my sophomore year as a finance student in the Carroll School of Management.
Excellent. Could you say a bit, each of you, about what attracted you to this pair? Do you remember? Sean?
So for this particular class, I always had an interest in history. And I figured, as we hear in countless info sessions, take these courses and you'll knock a theology core out of the way. Won't be a big deal. It'll be relatively painless. And I thought it would be an interesting concept. Little did I know I would end up becoming a theology major because of the class. So when Professor Garreau said you kind of use it to explore and you don't necessarily know what you'll find, it isn't necessarily a throwaway line. Like, they do genuinely mean that people pick up funky majors here and there. Not to say that theology is funky, but it's less traditional at BC. So you'll see that, individuals will take these courses looking to eliminate one part of their core and will end up falling in love with a piece of academic study that they weren't anticipating.
That's great.
Yeah, I saw a question in the Q&A earlier about is there a shopping period for classes at the beginning of each semester? And I ended up in this course in the add drop period, beginning of first semester, and I did it because it fit in my schedule and I really needed a class. And then I ended up loving it so much, and it was such a good call on my part. And I'm also considering potentially being a history major too now, even though I came into BC as a biochem major. And I really think that speaks to Sean's point about not knowing what you'll find and maybe even falling in love with something you didn't know about before.
For me, I kind of liked having a class that it was that covered multiple different topics, and since this is a history and theology core, I expected the course to do that, and it did. But other than that, I didn't expect much coming into this course. But for other students, I would tell them that this is a course to take because, not necessarily because of the specific topics we cover, but because of the application of it. And over the course of the semester, you become a much better writer and analyzer, reader. And if I had known that before, I would have definitely still taken this course, but been much more excited for it. But that's what I would tell other students to expect coming in.
That's great. So let's start with you again, Abel. So how are these courses different from other classes or courses you took at BC your freshman year?
Well, I think the students in this class were a lot closer than the students in other classes because we had 2 classes 3 times a week together, which is double a typical class. And so I think the friendships you get to know the students in class a lot better. And also, well, yeah, I feel like that's the biggest difference, honestly.
Sean, Madeline, do you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree. That was my big thing about how it's different from other classes too. I definitely made friends in it, and it's been a lot closer than any other class I've ever taken. Also, the fact that it's 2 different disciplines kind of rolled into one is very specific to the enduring questions chorus, and it makes you sort of look for connections in places when usually you'd just be focused on one topic, like just tunnel vision.
Because you took another enduring question pair, didn't you, Madeline?
I did in second
Similar-
semester.
Similar
Yeah.
in the sense. That's great. Sean?
And I would just say to Madeline's point that in terms of connection, not just between the classes, but also between the students, that because BC has so many different forms of community that exist, you really have to go looking for your people. And you're kind of looking for individuals who you don't want to just go out with on a Friday night, but necessarily who you want to have conversations with and who you think would be good roommates going forward and what have you. So those friends are identified through any host of mediums at BC, whether it's EQ classes that attract a certain type of person because they're intellectually curious, that you find individuals that you wouldn't have necessarily thought to reach out to, and from different majors, because at a point you get to a major specific classes and you start pigeonholing yourself. But as freshmen, you get to understand that let's meet everyone across the board, so that some of my closest friends are pre-med majors when I'm a sociology major, and we never necessarily would have interacted, which I think is a huge bonus of the EQs.
So you didn't have other courses that ended with a TikTok from the courses? No? Okay. No. So one of the questions that's come in was, were any of you nervous about the structure of the core requirements in coming to BC, and were your concerns founded, or were they allayed in courses like these?
Yes, I was nervous about the amount of writing you had to do and researching and that kind of thing. And then it turned out that I actually kind of liked to do it, and I was really interested in the topic anyways, so it was sort of almost fun for me. And then also I was nervous that I was going to be bored. I was like, is it just another history course, another theology course? But I found out that it's not. It's so much different than the history that you might have learned in high school or any theology you might have learned in high school.
And so Sean, you mentioned changing a major, adding a major actually after taking the course. Was there anything for the rest of you that changed for you personally or academically? You talked about some of the relationships.
I'm thinking about adding a minor. It has nothing to do with history or theology, but I do think this class just helped me, I guess, broaden my view and think about different things and realize that even as a business student, you could study other things that may be more liberal, having to do more with reading and writing. And so that's having me, I guess, open my eyes to other possible major and minors as well.
That's great. Sean, did you want to add something there? You look like...
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to the end that I saw a lot of questions in the chat that, and it's a question that I regularly field going to BC is, how religious is Boston College? And the response, that I think pretty much every BC student gives is, it's there for you if you like it, and it's not if you don't. The theology core is terrifying to most people. They say, I don't want to go to BC to be indoctrinated. And I say, don't worry, I didn't, and I'm still not. I came into BC from a public school. My family wasn't particularly religious, and I always kind of mutter that I'm a theology major under my breath because people look at me like I have 6 heads. It's one of my favorite departments. The professors there are incredible. And I would say that the reason I am a theology major is because I have both an interest in the subject matter, but also in the way that theologians think. And that a lot of what majors provide you is an element of how to think and approach things. And if a lot of you during Professor DeLongbaugh's commentary in the earlier slides were kind of like, whoa, I'd never thought about it that way. That's a lot of what I experienced in my theology classes my freshman year, and couldn't recommend enough through these core classes, is that you're going to experience different ways of approaching problems and kind of the world generally, that you're going to say, you know what, maybe that's something I want to look into.
I like that question that came in the chat. How do professors deal with hands-on engagement in the classroom? Do you any of you want to talk about that?
We had a ton of like hands-on type things last semester, and I can't speak for COVID concerns, but last semester we did, or 2 semesters ago, we ended up going to a mosque service and a church service and like a variety of other sort of events as a class, and having reflection sessions as a class. So not only did it bring us closer together, like we've said before, and we all sort of became friends and very comfortable with each other, we also became closer with the professors too. So I think it really helped with that.
And in fact, we were so interested in keeping the conversation going that we initiated something called Core Conversations, where we brought your class back together in the spring semester, right? And we were intending on doing some more things together to keep us as a group. COVID sort of challenged some of that, but we were able to meet and have a meal and start a scavenger hunt. And so that was really fun, and it's something that I think we will hope to do moving forward. Until you all become alum either. You'll never stop thinking about geographies of influence. Anyway, so Madeline, what was the part of the course that you enjoyed the most?
That I enjoyed the most? Obviously the people was a huge part of that, but if you want to talk more about the actual content of the class, I came from a public school too, and I never really even knew what theology was. And I never even really knew what real history was. I was just used to memorizing things and taking a test and maybe writing a paper here and there. And I really liked the connections that it made. And I also really liked learning about Islam too, because I knew little to nothing about it before I came into the class. Like, I knew it was a religion. That was it pretty much. And I really enjoyed learning about that, and also just being a great group of people and making friends.
Well, thank you to both of our professors and all of our students for a really wonderful inside look at one of the enduring questions here at Boston College. And you've already seen some of the great questions that have come in on the Q&A, and Professor Garreau and I have been monitoring it as well. I'm going to start with one very specific one that came in early, and you may have covered it, but I thought it was just so pointed and directed at the course. The question to all of you, any of you can answer it, is, does the course look at do the courses look at cultural suppression and expansion during the time of these empires? Maybe some of you would like to weigh in on that one.
I would like the students to answer.
I think we definitely looked at culture. I can't remember exactly what, it was a little while ago, but I know that we always try to go beyond just the surface of things and look at like demographics, like race, language, obviously, maps and territories, and we really try to look deeper into things. And so I think culture and identity was like a big thing we covered, and culture goes hand in hand with that. So we definitely looked at those topics.
The next, we'll go now to some more general questions, because we've got a really captive audience here that see all of you as currently enrolled Boston College students, and they're wrestling with their choices and want to soak up all the expertise and wisdom they can from you. So I thought one that was really interesting also was, are there other unique academic programs at Boston College besides the core curriculum? I mean, we obviously got the academic departments, majors, but other unique academic programs that any of you, either students or professors, could talk about? Maybe the students, if you've experienced anything else beyond the core.
I might take this one just to plug Perspectives, Living and Learning. I did that course as I was terrified of the housing lottery, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to send myself to Newton so that at least I know where I'm living. Newton's not that bad. To anyone who's on this call dreading living on Newton, I loved it. I will tout its praises until I'm blue in the face. So I promise you, you're gonna have a great time. It's one of the best programs, and my freshman for fall semester was comprised of these two courses, perspectives, and then one other course. So I basically took the gambit of all the freshman courses you could take. And while you're a freshman, you have to take them. They're so good. And then you can't take them as you get older. And one of our biggest gripes as sophomores, juniors, and seniors is that we want more. Like, we genuinely want to take more EQs and more CPs going forward because they're just so incredible classes. So definitely look into Perspectives Living and Learning. I promise Newton won't kill you. The bus is fun. I met some of my closest friends on the bus. So that's my plug for that.
I want to jump in here very quickly because it is important to mention that there are other unique, distinctive opportunities for the incoming students. Perspectives is one of them. The Pulse program is another. There might be students here who have some experience. I know Natana or Elizabeth could speak about Pulse as well. There was a question related here about the process for applying to take an Enduring Questions or Complex Problems course. Do students get their first choice? They often don't, but I think you can hear from the students that it wasn't probably their first choice, and some of them didn't take this course because they knew that Elizabeth and Antana were outstanding professors. It sort of happened by happenstance, but the outcome was fantastic. I will say that we have enough complex problem and enduring questions courses for about half of the incoming students to take one of these classes either in the fall or the spring semester. So those courses, on top of Perspectives, on top of Pulse, on top of some opportunities that we have for faculty to become advisors of incoming students, we have enough distinctive possibilities for everyone that in the incoming class to take at least one of them. So that's good news.
Thanks, Brian. A question has just come in from a young man, which I think is also just really great, focusing once again on the core and sort of connecting to some of the things that I said about the core at the start. What are some of the, this is directed to the students, what are the benefits of the core focused curriculum at Boston College for students who are unsure of what they think they're going to major in? How might the core help you to go through that discernment exercise of finding a passion, a major?
I can really answer that. I came into BC and I was like, I'm a math and science person. I'm going to major in science. That's all I want to do. I don't like humanities. And then I took this class first semester and I was like, wait a minute, maybe I do like humanities. Maybe I do like liberal arts. And now I really think that I'm going to gear my academic career towards that instead of the science, or maybe with the sciences. So it definitely really changed my opinion on humanities, and that was a big thing.
Either of the other gentlemen would like to weigh in on that? That really is, I think, such an important point, and harkens back to what I said at the start. You know, in high school, don't be overly concerned about identifying a major. Allow yourself to be immersed in a liberal arts education, and you'll really find yourself. You'll find your passions. Sean or Abel, either one?
Yeah, well, I think that a core curriculum is perfect if you don't know what you want to do, or even if you do, because you really do get to take a course in pretty much every single topic, major topic you could possibly think of. And that really allows you to see what you like, what you don't like, and you have to take it, so there's no avoiding it. And so you're kind of forced to figure out what you like, and you're forced to figure out what you don't like. And I think that's great for everyone to realize.
So many great questions coming in here. I think I'm going to ask one, and this again will be focused to our students because I think the prospective students are interested in you. We're living in a very challenging time, both with the pandemic and obviously very serious racial tension questions being raised all summer since the incidents of May with the murder of George Floyd. And students are interested in what's the culture of activism look like at Boston College?
I think I could answer this from a little bit different perspective. I don't know too many people who are politically active, but I do know a lot of people who are active in different engagements. Most of them are like community service engagements. I know a lot of students, including myself, are involved in community service clubs, and there's a ton of students who are interested in, and let's say it might not be political activism, but it could be education reform and me and other students volunteer at schools, or it could be better policies that have to deal with the homeless. And there are multiple homeless shelters that people volunteer at through different clubs. And so just different specific topics that students have a passion towards. The main club we have is for Boston, but there are also other clubs, and pretty much any student who wants an opportunity to volunteer at a school or a prison or a homeless shelter or any other area they're passionate about, they have that opportunity. And I think a lot of students take it. I think that speaks for the culture.
Great question from another student. How do professors engage with students in and outside of the classroom? Obviously, we've focused on this particular course, but maybe you could cite examples of other professors, other courses that you've taken, and things that professors have done inside the classroom. Certainly, we have a tradition here of faculty inviting students to their homes for dinner, I know. Have any of you experienced some unique characteristics of Boston College in that regard?
I think that with COVID-19, it was definitely an interesting experience because you were invited into their home every day. And I know that one of my theology professors in the spring semester told us a lot about his home life. He was a scholar in crisis, and he was in the United States, and he was sponsored by BC. And he would tell us a lot about what it was to come from Tajikistan, and a country that I couldn't have pointed to on a map if it had to save my life, much less told you anything about it. So hearing about his home life, and him just being so frank with us, I've often found that that's something I so appreciate once you get beyond high school, is that professors will keep it honest with you and they'll be real with you, which is something that's so rare but so valuable because you're going to go to them for both academic advice and life advice. And to all of that, you know, your professors are going to be the best resource that you have.
Terrific. Brian, why don't you go ahead? You found another great question.
I did. These are wonderful. The audience, I don't know if you can see this, but you've asked over 90 questions and most of them have been answered. This is wonderfully engaging. There's a great question here for Elizabeth and Natana about how are you structuring the class for the fall? So how will the class be structured due to COVID and online lessons? I know there's been lots of preparation going on across the university. I know through talking with Elizabeth that her courses are going through major transitions for the fall. I'm sure Natana is as well. I'd love to hear the answer to this question.
So our course is going to be completely online in the fall, Brian, in hopes that we'll be able to have also international students who couldn't even come to campus in the fall be able to attend. It will start at 8 a.m. and it will finish up at 10:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time because they're two courses paired together. And our Canvas sites are ready for all students to access them at all times. And so we will be holding synchronous classes, but the materials will be there for students in any eventuality. We don't want anyone to feel pressured if they're ill or if they have a family member who's ill to have to attend the in-person. And our reflection sessions will also be online. Professor DeLongbass, would you like to follow up any more with that?
I would add that our library personnel are doing a wonderful job of getting materials ready so that those are available online, working on equal access to all materials to make sure that everybody's budgets are respected, and also that everyone has the same access to reading materials. And we're also trying to think creatively about how do we make Zoom sessions even more exciting? It's a little bit easier in some ways to bring outside speakers in because we don't have to worry about planes and weather problems and all of the other inconveniences. All we have to do is get on the computer. So we'll be able to hopefully share more voices with the classes. Worship services are a little bit more challenging, but I think it's a good time to really think about what can be gained and what can be lost with worship services online. And it also means that students can experience a broader array of worship services depending on what's available online. And I'm still hoping that we might have some live services available as well so that you can get a mix of those two kinds of experiences. So it's an opportunity for us to keep learning. If I don't learn, I get bored, and I don't like to be bored. So I need something interesting to keep me engaged.
One other question, pivoting back to the course specifically, In your presentation, there was a photograph of both of you taking students to a museum. And so one student asked about, are there other core courses, or for that matter, other faculty members that utilize the city of Boston as a resource to complement what's happening in the classroom? And Boston is just so rich in history and culture. Students, have you encountered anything?
Yes, I was in another Enduring Questions course second semester, and we did actually take a trip to the MIT Museum. The course was about artificial intelligence, so they have a whole, their whole museum is basically about artificial intelligence. We went there and looked at all the like robots and things like that. And we were supposed to go to more places at the end of the semester, but obviously COVID prevented that from happening.
I think I'm going to do one final question for you before we sign off. And this is sort of a general one. And again, I think prospective students are just hungry for insights. One student asked, what opportunities does being a BC student afford to you? That's a very general question, but what opportunities do you feel have been opened up to you by having come to Boston College, either in or outside of the classroom?
I think the alumni network is really strong. I know I just finished my freshman year, but I already got an internship this summer just because of an alumni that I knew. And I was connected through BC, and they helped me get in touch with an alumni that could get me an internship. And so I think that opportunity is available to pretty much anyone. And also not even just connections that you might make through like a formal network, but also you could run into people on the street and find out that they're also a BC alum. And just like that, you have a connection. I know that has happened to a lot of my friends, and I think that's a big benefit.
Great point, Abel. There's about 180,000 BC alumni in this country and all around the world. And I know that many of them are linked directly to the Career Center, and through Eagle Link, students can oftentimes make connections with alumni and even shadow alumni in their workplaces. Sean, Madeline, final thoughts perhaps from you on that question?
I would just say that one thing that BC has provided me since being there is that it has shown me a bunch of stuff that I didn't even know that I needed. BC has a way of making sure that you get what you need when you need it. And I think that's what's so unique about Boston College that I can have told many of my friends about from home, and that none of them able to come back at me and say that their school had it too, is that countless times in our class, our professors would ask us how we were doing, not with a paper, not with our exams, but like how we were doing transitioning to school, which is so rare that we had two professors who genuinely cared. And I've been to both Professor Schlala and DeLongba's office hours even after our class, and they've had to kick me out of their office. Like, I actually have current students that I need to talk to, but they have always been there for us. And it's something that's so beyond unique from BC's perspective as compared to any other school that I applied to or even considered attending. And I'm so grateful for it.
Thank you. Madeline?
Just very similar to that, but also the ability to be able to step out of your comfort zone and try new things. That's been huge for me. I've tried so many different things that I never even thought I would want to do, like this class and other outside activities and clubs. And it's just really made me, I think, more well-rounded. And even though that sounds cliche, but more well-rounded and just more interesting, and being able to do things that interest me more.
Well, it's 5 o'clock, and I want to extend my profound thanks to Professors Schlala and DeLongbass for sharing your expertise with us this afternoon and sharing this really exciting core course at Boston College. Sean, Abel, Madeline, thanks so much for joining us here in the waning weeks of summer as you're getting ready to start the new academic year. Professor Garreau, always a pleasure working with you on anything related to the core curriculum. To all of you out there, we're so pleased that you've joined us this afternoon. It was over 300 students participating this afternoon and watching the session. We're delighted that you're interested in Boston College and in the core curriculum. As all of you prepare to go back to school, whether it's in person or online or in some kind of hybrid fashion, we just want you to know, enjoy these last couple of weeks of the summer. We wish you successful return to school, and let's hope that by the end of 2020, early 2021, we will all be restored to some sense of normalcy. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Good luck as you move forward.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.